Hello and welcome to another modern gameplay video by Ready Made Gaming. Today we have Bant Urza Blade going up against Green Red Ponza. Both players are going to flash their opening hands. The Urza Stoneblade player has Path, 2 Exile, 2 Snow-Covered Islands, a Pithing Needle, a Remand, a Prairie Stream, and a Witching Well. Joe on Green Red Ponza is on Wooded Foothills, Windswept Heath, Stomping Ground, Glorybringer, Bonecrusher Giant, Bloodbraid Elf, and Clothis. I'm going to start off on a Snow-Covered Island and a Witching Well. Joe's going to play a Stomping Grounds. For my second turn, I'm just going to play a Snow-Covered Island, probably leaving up Remand here, setting up for an untapped Prairie Stream on the next turn. Joe follows his Stomping Ground up with a Wooded Foothills for the turn. Looking at Joe's hand, I think that was probably a mulligan. I'm not sure. I generally like keeping hands that have mana acceleration if it exists in my deck. So this Pithing Needle I placed on the stack. I know that the cards that I could name are Arbor Elf, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, but if Joe is going to leave the Wooded Foothills on the battlefield, I'm perfectly happy Stone Raiding the Stone Raid player. I'm still leaving Remand up. At this point, I will remand pretty much anything that Joe puts onto the stack. I kept a slow reactive hand. In a lot of instances, Pithing Needle is generally just something you want to have in your deck to War of Invention up. Here's another Witching Well. Checking the hand here. I believe this Witching Well shows us an Urza and a Thopter Foundry. I'm not sure. That might have been the first Witching Well. That was Urza Thopter Foundry. This one goes bottom. Joe places his Wooded Foothills far away from the rest of his lands that he can use. I'm probably going to remand this just to get the remand out of my hand. Yeah. Get a little ways through my deck. Joe's going to replay the Arbor Elf. We have Path to Exile. I don't feel like we need to path, obviously, an Arbor Elf here. Yeah, we're going to Teferi, just tempo. Bounce the Arbor Elf, draw another card. Have not played a land yet. We are debating between a shock land and a fetch land. Generally against Ponza, I would like to keep my fetch lands on the battlefield and active so that I can tutor up basic lands. This deck is not very hungry for green mana. The shock land in question is a breeding pool. There's only 2 cards in the main deck with green in their mana requirements, and they're both Uros. So we're kind of a long way off from Uro anyway. We're going to stomp that Teferi. That's a good play. Take my Teferi on an unpleasant adventure. Oh, and Joe has to go to discard. Yeah, that Pithing Needle's putting in a lot of work. If it were live, Joe would be able to replay the Arbor Elf. So that Pithing Needle is kind of a 2-for-1 right now. The card he discarded and the Wooded Foothills itself. We're going to fetch up our basic forest. These Bant decks, even after Astrolabe was banned, they still have a pretty good ability to play around Blood Moon. I originally was just on blue-white. I ended up wanting to play green because I'm greedy, and I generally add a color as opposed to remove a color when I'm building a deck. There's a Utopia Sprawl, so at least Joe won't have to go to discard here. He can run out the Arbor Elf now. He's thinking about something. Oh, he's thinking about potentially having a Lightning Bolt for that construct. I think now I will path to exile. I would path to exile the Arbor Elf. Yeah, the Utopia Sprawl makes it so that the Arbor Elf makes 2 mana. Path to exile only gives my opponent 1. Did I have enough mana to do that? Yeah, 3 and a blue. I'll use Urza to make mana off of my artifacts and sacrifice a Witching Well to draw 2 cards. I will now present Sword of the Meek and War of Invention to assemble Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meek, and Urza, Lord High Artificer. With that combination of cards, you get an arbitrarily large amount of life, an arbitrarily large amount of mana, and an arbitrarily large amount of 1/1 Thopters. So here I'm going to be bringing out Cryptic Commands, Jace, and Relic of Progenitus. There's usually a flex spot as far as the artifacts go. Bringing in Veil of Summers and Spellskite. Joe's going to be trimming a Birds of Paradise, cutting all of his what looked like Bone Crusher Giants, and bringing in 2 Cinder Vines, as well as 2 Boils. Boil's a heck of a Magic card. I was considering going down to 4 on this hand. I don't have a lot of action. I don't have a lot of protection from non-basic hate. I'm always hesitant to go down to 4. I know that a solid 4 is better than, a medium to bad 5. And with the new Mulligan rule, well, not new anymore, but with the updated Mulligan rule, it seems pretty unlikely that I would have gotten a 4 that was as bad as the 5 that I got. So I probably should have shipped it. I'm usually more... I usually tend to mulligan aggressively in EDH more than constructed, but I feel like mulliganing to 5, I don't know. There's a Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge Mystic is going to get, I believe, the last artifact in my deck that is an equipment. I opened this game with Batterskull, and I believe I drew my sword. Looks like Joe has a lightning bolt ready for that Stoneforge Mystic. We'll draw here. This is the saddest play. I remember this one pretty well. It's about the saddest play that you can produce. Stoneforge Mystic, number 2. No search, pass. Miss a land drop. It's about as bad as it can get right now. I don't have a white mana, so I don't even have a white mana to cast that Stoneforge Mystic, actually. I'm pretty sure I realized that about halfway through this turn, and just pick them up. Otherwise, I would have used the white mana to activate the Stoneforge Mystic to sneak in a Batterskull. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Joe noticed that I tapped a non-basic for white, and just chose to not care. Chose to let me do it there. He just wanted to play that game forever. Mull to 5, miss a bunch of land drops, yeah. Alright, so this is a much better hand. Looks like we have lands. We have some sort of interaction. That Prairie Stream just keeps coming up. That's a 1-of in the list. There's just 1 of that card. Sometimes it is an Azorius Guildgate, and sometimes it's a Tundra. So, Joe leading off on a Verdant Catacombs. I'm just going to do the blue-white control thing and hit land drops. And I probably have an Ether Gust or a Remand, or at least I'm representing them, so he's got to be careful with his plays from this point. That's the power of being on the play, the tempo you get, and I just love tempo. I love it. I wish I was a better Magic player so I could play like Delver of Secrets and stuff like that. The real tempo-oriented strategies. But I'll just stick to my 3-color control piles. Try to outmuscle mid-range decks. Alright, so shields are down here. That Stoneforge Mystic was probably a rip off the top. And I certainly think, in the face of Cinder Vines, it probably would have been better to leave up the Remand or the Aether Gust, if that's what I was representing. But tutoring up the Sword and already having the Urza in hand kind of makes me think, since we'll be able to fetch white mana or blue mana with that Flooded Strand, as long as we can dodge Boil before Urza hits the battlefield, we should be in good shape. So we'll untap, we'll draw, we were considering fetching. In Modern, when you fetch matters less than it does in Legacy. Here I am electing to fetch in my main phase, get a basic island, or I'm sorry, that's a basic plains. So that'll dodge both the Boil and the Blood Moons that we are trying to play around here. Looks like we kind of split the difference. Instead of playing an island, which we certainly have in our hand, we play a Field of Ruin. So we lose harder to Blood Moon, but if we lose to Blood Moon, that's fine. We have an Urza that can generate as much blue mana as we have artifacts, and we have an island to play in our hand. Looks like Joe missed a land drop here. That's kind of tough. I don't think he's in a position where he can fire off the Cinder Vines to kill the Construct. There's a second Cinder Vines. I still don't think that killing the Construct would be correct here. I think if you leave 1 mana up and try to position yourself in such a way that the Cinder Vines can tag the Thopter Foundry when there's not another available artifact to sacrifice to trigger the Sword of the Meek and generate that loop. But I don't know if you can afford to play passively enough to leave 2 mana up just sort of as a safeguard against a combo that you're not even looking at yet. But it's definitely a line that you might want to consider, knowing that I tutored up the Sword of the Meek earlier. So there's that basic island that we were considering playing last turn. I think we're going to try to induce the activation of one of the Cinder Vines here. I think the best way to do that is to make Joe feel like he has extra mana lying around. So we're going to Field of Ruin the non-basic here, which generates an extra mana for him. And generally, one of the things that I noticed that players might not do often enough, just spend all of your mana. And generally speaking, that is, in my opinion, the right way to play, to use all the mana that you have available to you on each turn cycle. And this is one of those cases where I don't think it is actually correct to do that. I am playing artifacts into Cinder Vines. They're going to trigger. They're both going to do some damage. I'm going to scry 2 to the top. Trying to make him think, okay, he got value out of his Cinder Vines. He's doing some damage. I'm probably not going to, so on and so forth. I'm basically trying to level Joe at this point into cracking one of the Cinder Vines to destroy my Construct. Maybe if it were a little bit bigger, maybe I should have ran out the Sword. If I ran out the Sword, he might have used the Cinder Vines on the Construct to stop 3 damage, but I just don't think it's big enough to present a threat that I could get Joe to make that mistake into. Just got a peek of Joe's hand. Bloodbraid Elf, Glorybringer, Glorybringer. A lot of 4 and 5 mana spells here. There's a Bloodbraid Elf. Now, he is tapped out here. Joe is tapped out. So if I can get to a spot where I can generate enough mana to cast a War of Invention for 2 and a Sword of the Meek, I should be able to tap whatever artifact I have left untapped with Urza, whether it be a Construct or a Witching Well or whatever, for enough mana to get my combo online, generate a huge number of tokens and gain a lot of life. And there's the Hallowed Fountain I've been toying with the entire game. Been trying to dodge Boil. I was actually hoping for Boil last turn. If it was Boil, I would have had an open shot to win. But Bloodbraid Elf largely does the same thing, and Bloodbraid Elf being left back to block is not great. That's not what BB wants to be doing. So yeah, there's the Sword of the Meek, and there's the Whir of Invention. We're going to go get a Thopter Foundry, tap the Thopter Foundry for blue, use the blue to sacrifice Sword of the Meek to generate a 1/1. Sword of the Meek is going to see the 1/1 enter the battlefield, and that's the loop. That's the combo there. So, yeah, that was a tough game for green-red Ponza. That matchup might not be great. Well, thanks for watching.